My pillow still smelled like home when they told me it no longer was. I grew up believing the living room walls could hold every kind of laughter. Mom painted them a soft eggshell, the color she called morning light, and swore it made arguments dissolve faster. Dad kept a coffee ring on the dining table varnish, his silent claim to the house he'd built board by board the year I was born. To any outsider, we were the family that lingered over Saturday pancakes, that wrote birthday poems on the fridge, that took photos in matching scarves for Christmas cards. I was 17 and one semester shy of graduating high school, the unremarkable middle child who played guitar in church and tutored freshmen for gas money. Comfort, not extravagance, was our privilege, and I never questioned how solid the floorboards felt beneath my feet. Then Ava arrived. She was my cousin by blood but a ghost by reputation, a name whispered in adult conversations cut short when I entered the room. When her mother, Mom's younger sister, lost her battle with addiction, Ava was folded into our household like a fragile keepsake nobody knew how to display. She was 2 months older than me, all sharp eyeliner and silence, dragging a suitcase that rattled with pill bottles she swore she no longer needed. At first, I tried to see her as family, inviting her to the kitchen to taste Mom's apple crumble or to the spare love seat to watch late-night reruns. She nodded, thanked me, and retreated to her bedroom, the guest room off the hallway, closing the door with a click that sounded like the word mine. I went back to practicing chords in my room. The attic loft Dad had converted into a music nook. My posters, my notebooks, the string lights I'd stapled above the desk. Tiny symbols of a life stitched carefully in place. 3 weeks after her arrival, I came home from a volunteer shift at the shelter to find my guitar case leaning against the couch, my clothes folded in trash bags at its feet. Dad's hushed voice trembled even as he tried to sound reasonable. Ava needs privacy to heal. She's been through something, son. Mom added the line I'd replay in my head for months. It's only temporary. You're strong enough to understand. I glanced up the staircase and saw the attic door already ajar, a soft glow spilling onto the landing, my fairy lights illuminating her silhouette. In that instant, the house tilted, as though one supporting beam had been yanked free. Somewhere in the back of my throat, a protest rose like bile, but all that escaped was a polite, broken nod. That night the couch springs pressed into my ribs while Ava's lullaby of muffled sobs drifted down the stairs. And beneath the eggshell walls that once dissolved every argument, I felt the first hairline crack forming, quiet as a secret but destined to split everything wide open. I used to think betrayal was loud. A slammed door, a shouted curse, a courtroom gavel. Instead, it crept in on soft socks, wrapped in the language of concern. 2 nights after I surrendered my room, Ava padded downstairs while I was brushing my teeth in the hall bathroom. Her voice was small enough to slip under the door. I'm sorry, but can we talk? We sat on opposite ends of the couch. My new bed, like strangers on a bus. She clasped her hands so tightly her knuckles blanched, eyes fixed on a stain in the rug. Sometimes I get scared at night, she whispered. Memories. I think someone's watching me. I followed her gaze to the staircase and realized she meant me. Before I could shape a denial, Mom appeared behind her, arms folded, concern turning the corners of her mouth downward. Dad leaned on the doorframe, weary in a way I'd never seen. Your cousin doesn't feel safe upstairs, he said. We want to make sure everyone is comfortable. The next morning, Ava's silver necklace, an heirloom from her mother, went missing. She discovered the empty jewelry box while I was gulping cereal in the kitchen. Her scream shattered the morning quiet, and soon Mom was rifling through drawers, panic eclipsing reason. I offered to help search, but Ava's trembling finger froze me mid-step. You were the only one home last night, she said. Dad didn't call me a thief, not outright. He simply looked at me, eyes wide, pleading for an explanation I didn't have. The silence that followed was worse than any accusation. When I unfolded my blanket on the couch that evening, I found the necklace tangled in the sheets, as if planted by invisible hands. Mom lifted the chain with surgical delicacy, disappointment quivering in her voice. Sweetheart, We know you're under stress, but lying makes it worse. Dad's shoulders sagged the way roofs do before they cave under snow. I stared at them, mouth open, lungs burning, but my words felt disposable. Crumpled receipts nobody cared to read. There was no trial, no jury, only a verdict delivered in sighs and sidelong glances. They didn't ground me. They watched me. Every movement, every drawer I opened, every phone call I took was catalogued as potential evidence of some deeper rot. I started cataloging myself, counting how many times a day I swallowed back an argument, how often my hands shook when I touched anything that wasn't mine. In the span of 72 hours, the house that once sang with weekend laughter became a museum of suspicion. The worst part was the echo in my head. Maybe I did something. Maybe I'm not remembering right. That whisper gouged deeper than their mistrust, because it belonged to me, and it was growing louder. The necklace incident cracked the last bit of trust like a windshield that splinters invisibly at first, then spiders across overnight. Mom started locking her purse in the bedroom. Dad changed the Wi-Fi password and said it was for security. Ava, once a dusk-colored shadow in the hallway, became light itself. Every grievance she breathed was instantly believed, every tremor of fear treated as prophecy. I felt myself shrinking, not only in square footage but in worth, like a family photo cropped until the middle child disappears. School should have been refuge, but gossip moves faster than grief. Ava's boyfriend, whom she claimed she dumped for my protection, went to my high school too. Within a week, lockers hissed with rumors that I'd stolen medication from my own cousin, that Dad was keeping an eye on me because I was spiraling. My guitar tutorings dried up. Parents didn't want a troubled kid alone with theirs. When I walked into chemistry, 3 lab partners scuttled their stools closer together, leaving a vacancy beside the Bunsen burner that felt colder than open flame. At home, the couch became a moat between me and the rest of the house. Night after night, I stared at the ceiling fan's blades carving the dark, counting rotations the way prisoners count bars. Sleep offered no escape. I jerk awake convinced I heard Ava tiptoeing, frantic, searching for a new object to misplace and find near my blanket. I began photographing my own belongings before I left the house, a wretched catalog of innocence. Cracked phone, Velcro wallet, second-hand sneakers. Proof that turned to dust whenever Mom sighed. "We just want to help you, honey." Her eyes scanning my pockets. Dad tried once to reach across the gulf. He took me for a drive to clear the air. The truck's cab smelled of sawdust and old vinyl, a scent that used to spell safety. He gripped the steering wheel as if it were the edge of a cliff. "Your cousin's trauma is complicated," he muttered. "Maybe give her space?" Space. She had my room. I had a sagging couch and a reputation that bled. I stared out the window, watched telephone poles blur into a Morse code of unanswered questions, and realized the conversation was less plea than warning. Adapt, or you'll be the problem we can't ignore. Money tightened next. Dad caught me filling out community college scholarship forms at the library and said, "Let's focus on fixing things here before planning the future." Translation: the tuition savings account was on hold until I proved I wasn't a liability. My stomach pitched, years of part-time work, honor roll certificates, late-night cram sessions, all suspended in the purgatory of their doubt. Isolation calcified into something uglier during winter break. One evening, I borrowed the car to clear my head and returned 10 minutes after curfew. Traffic, a blown streetlight, nothing sinister. The porch light was off. The deadbolt clicked behind me like a sentence. Mom opened the door just wide enough to pass a blanket through. "We'll talk in the morning," she whispered, tears silvering her lashes. I slept on the front steps, frost crusting the fringes of the blanket, heart beating to the word unwanted. That night, for the first time, the idea of disappearing didn't feel theatrical. Felt merciful. If I left, maybe their house would heal, maybe Ava's tremors would still, maybe Mom's coffee would taste sweet again. The thoughts lined up like pills on a nightstand. Small, white, deceptively simple solutions. I never swallowed them, but I rehearsed the motion, convinced the world would prefer I slip quietly from its narrative. January plunged to record lows. One afternoon I came home to find a padlock on the hall closet. My guitar trapped inside. Mom said Ava was triggered by loud noises. Dad said therapy was expensive and suggested I journal. I read between lines that had become boldface. There is no place for your voice here. That evening I walked downtown, slipped into the bus station, and sat on a plastic seat until the last departure left without me. I counted my cash, $42 and a lint-fuzzed gift card, and planned routes to nowhere. Yet even rock bottom has basements. When I finally trudged back, I spotted a flicker behind the curtains. Ava's silhouette in my window, humming softly, the glow of my fairy lights casting halos around her shoulders. Something inside me snapped. Not a howl, not a roar, just the brittle sound a heart makes when it surrenders. I lay on the porch boards, too numb to shiver, and watched dawn stain the horizon violet, wondering whether sunlight could bleach shame. In that pale January sunrise, I realized I was homeless in the house that bore my name. I reached my breaking point on a Wednesday so cold the air felt like broken glass in my lungs. School had closed early for snow, but I stayed behind, pretending to finish a chemistry lab so I could avoid the silent dinner table back home. When the custodian finally flicked the lights, I trudged into town, guitar-calloused fingers shoved into pockets too thin for the wind. The plan, if I could call it that, was to sleep in the 24-hour laundromat. The owner usually ignored me as long as I kept a washer spinning with my last quarters. Halfway there, I spotted a battered upright piano beneath the awning of a thrift store, keys yellowed like old teeth. A handwritten sign read "Free if you can move it." Snowflakes clung to the varnish. Maybe it was the absurdity of the moment, maybe the ache in my chest demanding to be heard, but I sat on the rickety bench and let my fingers find the chords I'd practiced since childhood. They were clumsy without my guitar, but melody is stubborn. Once it knows the way out, it will claw through frost and splinters to breathe. I didn't notice the man standing in the doorway until the final note trembled into silence. He was 60-ish, all corduroy and wool, with the kind of gentle posture you see in people who spend more time listening than speaking. "You play like the heater's broken," he said, offering a smile that reached the corners of his eyes. I muttered an apology for trespassing. He waved it off. "Name's Whitaker. I run the repair shop next door. Come inside before your hands seize." The repair shop smelled of cedar shavings and machine oil, like autumn trapped in a bottle. Mr. Whitaker poured 2 mugs of instant cocoa and listened while I stumbled through a half-truth about being between rooms. He didn't press for details. Instead, he tapped the workbench cluttered with violin bridges and trumpet valves. I could use hands that know the difference between music and noise. Sweep up after school, help tune the consignment guitars. Pays what it pays. Upstairs, there's a loft no one's rented in years. Needs elbow grease, but the roof holds. I stared at him, waiting for the caveat. Sign a contract, call your parents, prove you're not a thief. None came. He slid a spare key across the wood. "First month's rent is showing up tomorrow." I felt something hot sting my eyes, confused it for embarrassment until I realized it was relief, raw and wordless. That night, I scrubbed the loft floors until the water in the bucket turned the color of melted slate. The space was no bigger than my parents' pantry, yet every square foot whispered yours. I unrolled my blanket on the bare mattress and, for the first time in weeks, slept without rehearsing defenses in my head. Work at the shop became ritual. Mornings at school, afternoons replacing guitar strings and polishing brass until each instrument reflected a version of myself I almost recognized. Steady hands, focused gaze. Mr. Whitaker paid me in small bills tucked into a coffee can and in larger currencies. Stories of the bands he'd toured with in the 80s, advice delivered like chord progressions, quiet, essential, building toward resolution. One evening, he set a business card on the counter. New Horizons Counseling, group sessions for youth in crisis. "Strings snap if you tighten them alone," he said. I nearly laughed, then realized he was serious. Shame pricked my skin. Counseling was what Mom said Ava needed, what Dad said we couldn't afford. But Mr. Whitaker had already arranged the fee, bartering instrument repairs for session slots. "Consider it part of your apprenticeship," he winked. Therapy was a room of mismatched chairs and stories sharp enough to draw blood. I learned to name the things gnawing at me: gaslighting, familial scapegoat, complex trauma. Naming didn't fix them, but it shrank their shadows. I met Lena there, a med school dropout rebuilding her life after an overdose. She laughed like glass wind chimes and challenged me to write a song that didn't sound like mourning. We stayed after group, trading playlists and secrets. With her, belief didn't feel like pity. It felt like a duet, two melodies intertwining without one drowning the other. 3 months passed. I saved enough to buy a second-hand acoustic, blue as dusk. I played it in the shop window to draw customers, in the counseling lobby to calm newcomers, and late at night in the loft while snowmelt dripped off the eaves like a metronome. Each day layered discipline over the raw wound of betrayal, budget spreadsheets, college reapplications, push-ups on splintered floorboards, breathing exercises Lena insisted would keep panic from gnawing my ribs. One Friday afternoon, Mr. Whitaker handed me a thick envelope addressed to admissions office, State Conservatory. Deadline's Monday, he said. Inside were photocopies of my repaired transcripts, a recommendation letter he'd typed on shop stationery, and a check, the amount labeled tuition deposit. My throat closed. "Pay me back when you make your first album," he shrugged. I hugged him, awkward and wordless, smelling sawdust and mercy. I stood on the shop's front step that evening, watching downtown lights blur in the thawing air. Somewhere behind those street lamps lay the house where my pillow still smelled like home. Somewhere inside that house, the couch sagged under its new occupant. Maybe Ava, maybe no one at all. The ache was still there, yes, but it no longer dictated the tempo. Whitaker's key, cool in my palm, clicked softly against the guitar pick Lena had painted with the word stay. For the first time since my parents gave away my room, a strange, fierce certainty settled into my bones. I could keep what was mine and rebuild what had been stolen. I didn't notice the moment survival became living. It happened the way dawn edges a room before your eyes open. One June morning, the loft's cracked window panes caught the sun just right, throwing prisms across the plank floor, and I realized I had not flinched at an unexpected sound in weeks. By then, Whitaker's repair shop was busy enough to afford a proper front desk register. He let me carve my name on its underside like a secret signature. Therapy moved from crisis triage to something steadier. Blueprints for the kind of future I'd once only daydreamed about in guitar margin doodles. Then the conservatory letter arrived, cream envelope, embossed crest, my name printed without error. "We are pleased to offer you admission." I reread the sentence until the words blurred, afraid they might rearrange themselves into rejection if I blinked. I ran to the shop, brandished the letter like a torch. Whitaker slapped the counter so hard a pile of reeds jumped, shouting, "That's my boy!" Lena baked celebration brownies laced with too many crushed peanuts and kissed chocolate crumbs off my lip, teasing that fame better not change me. I thought that was the climax, the neat bow tying hurt into history. Life, though, is tone-deaf to tidy progressions. It was a sweltering Thursday when my past found the shop. I returned from a supply run to see Mom perched on the bench of the free piano I'd first played months ago, her hands folded like surrendered birds. Dad hovered near the doorway, weight distributed unevenly, as if guilt had sprained his stance. And Ava, sleepless eyes ringed with mascara moons, stood beside a suitcase whose zipper gaped like a wound. "Your cousin needs help," Mom began, the words brittle as sun-baked twigs. Ava's rehab had collapsed. Insurance, apparently, had run dry. They'd mortgaged the house for extended treatment, defaulted, and now a foreclosure notice hung on the eggshell walls. My room, what was once mine, sat behind padlocked doors belonging to a bank. They had driven 2 hours because Ava remembered the music shop that saved him. My father's voice cracked on the phrase, as though speaking it rewrote our family history in real time. Whitaker glanced at me, silent permission in his raised brow. The shop smelled suddenly of solder smoke and nostalgia. I led them upstairs, showed them the loft's slanted ceiling, the thrift store dishes stacked like mismatched cords, the quilt Lena had stitched from old concert tees. It was not large enough for 4. It was barely large enough for me. Still, Mom's eyes filled with the same wonder I'd felt when I first stepped inside. Over lukewarm tea, the truth spilled. How they believed every tremor of Ava's because trauma felt more urgent than teenage disappointment. How fear of losing another family member overshadowed fairness. How easy it is to confuse love with damage control. Ava's apology came last, voice raw as an untuned violin. She admitted planting the necklace. Anything to keep attention tethered to her pain. I thought if they worried about me, they'd forget I'd been forgotten, she whispered, and the sentence hurt more than the crime. Silence stretched, taut as new strings on a hollow body. In that hush I heard my own heart, steady now, no longer racing for approval. I realized forgiveness wasn't a performance for them. It was a gift I could choose for myself, to unclench the fist I'd been carrying inside my chest. But forgiving didn't mean forgetting or forfeiting boundaries. I offered to cover Ava's first month at a sober living facility recommended by my counselor. Whitaker agreed to part-time employment refurbishing keyboards, work that kept her hands busy and her mind calibrated to resonance instead of relapse. I would not return home, nor would I sacrifice the tuition deposit waiting at the conservatory's registrar. My parents nodded, tears tracking paths down cheeks weathered by concession. They thanked me as though I were the adult and they the errant children. That night, after they'd driven away with a map to the facility and Whitaker's phone number, I sat in the shop window cradling my dusk blue acoustic. Downtown lights flickered on like stage cues. I played the old hymn Mom used to hum while folding laundry. Come thou fount of every blessing. Only now the melody felt neither plea nor lament, but something nearer to blessing itself. My life, I realized, was no longer a room someone else could give away. It was a house I was building from reclaimed chords and steel-wound promises, every joist measured to the rhythm of hard-earned grace. 3 years pass the way rivers travel, never in straight lines. I keep the loft, though the ceiling still leaks when spring storms shoulder their way across town. And I frame the original key Whitaker handed me the night he rescued a stranger from the snow. Most mornings start with black coffee and scales on the dusk blue guitar. Most nights end with sheet music drafts scattered like feathers across the floorboards. Between those bookends, I juggle graduate theory classes, late shift repairs, and Saturdays volunteering at the counseling center where I once sat, fists clenched to keep from shaking. Ava writes monthly. At first, the letters arrived on floral stationery, each sentence a tremor of apology. Eventually, they thinned into postcards from sober living milestones. 90 days, 1 year, first apartment. The last card showed a small stage lit lavender. On the back she'd penned, joined an open mic group. Guess music runs in the family if you'll still claim me. I pinned it above my desk next to my conservatory acceptance letter. 2 testaments to repair written in different dialects. Mom and Dad call every Sunday evening. The conversations are gentle, cautious. Forgiveness is not a door flung open but one nudged wider each visit. They lost the old house, yes, but bought a smaller one near the coast. And Dad keeps a second-hand couch on the porch. For when you visit, kiddo, though you'll never have to sleep on it. Sometimes guilt shadows their voices. I let it pass like minor chords resolving into major. What matters is that we speak in present tense again. Do I forgive them? The word feels too slender to carry the weight of what happened. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not a single gesture but an architecture of choices. Answering the phone instead of letting it ring out. Mailing sheet music to my mother the day she admits she's taking guitar lessons so she can know a little of your language. Agreeing to tune the upright piano at Dad's church because he says the sanctuary sounds empty without it. Each act adds a beam, a joist, until the structure between us is sturdy enough to stand beneath. Justice? If justice means everyone suffering exactly what they inflicted, then life offers poor scales. Ava's relapse scarred her twice over. My parents live with the echo of their own misjudgment. I carry a phantom ache whenever I smell lavender detergent. The scent of the couch linens pressed into my hands that first displaced night. None of us emerged unbruised. Yet there is a quiet symmetry in how we keep reconstructing the places we broke. They rebuild trust, I rebuild melody, Ava rebuilds a future. Some nights I still wake to the memory of fairy light halos illuminating a thief in my attic room, and the old fury surges. I let it. Anger, like music, needs release or it curdles. I let the feeling swell, then bleed into the strings beneath my fingertips until it resolves into something almost beautiful. That, too, is justice, turning pain into a chord progression no one can steal. Last month, my debut album dropped, Keys Without Locks. I mailed the first vinyl pressing to Whitaker, the man who traded rent for belief. The liner notes read, "For the home we build inside ourselves, and for those who hand us the hammer." I used to think home was a room someone could give away. Now I know better. Home is every note I choose, every boundary I set, every sunrise I stay alive to witness. An address no eviction notice can ever reach.
If you made it this far, you're officially part of the drama. Subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done?